I am Dan Gusfield is my name. I'm a retired professor of computer science at the University of California in Davis, California, and I'm here at a wonderful meeting in Lake Como for PhD students in Pangenomics, computational evolution. Today, most of the data that is used to understand evolution comes from molecular data, DNA sequence, protein sequence, RNA sequence, and so on. And this is massive amounts of data. Look at the data from DNA, just letters A, T, C, and G, millions of those. You can't make sense of it just by looking at it. You have to have a computer to try to investigate that data, look for patterns, make comparisons, correlate what you're seeing in the DNA with what else you know about that organism, or know about its history, its relationship to other organisms. And if you're going to have a computer that's doing that, you need to have algorithms. You need to have programs that are actually making the computer do the right thing. That requires computer scientists or other knowledgeable biologists to invent the algorithms and to write the programs, and that's really what has brought computer scientists into this whole study of evolution. All this data that we have from DNA sequences, from protein sequences, now from hundreds of thousands of individuals whose DNA has been sequenced, and millions of organisms of different types whose DNA has been sequenced. We need to compare them and learn things from those sequences. That has to be done by a computer because it's overwhelming and much too complicated for just people to do by their own eyes and their own hands. But if you want a computer to do those things, you need computer algorithms, you need computer programs, you need databases, all of those things that computer scientists can study and create and make this a reality. So that's why computer scientists have been drawn into this whole question of biological data and computational biology and study of evolution. Yeah, I started being interested in biology and the use of computers in about 1975, a long time ago. And this was actually before the start of what's called bioinformatics. It was before the start of the Human Genome Project. This is, there were some papers that were written on this field, but there wasn't much data and there wasn't much interest. And so I liked that field because it was very quiet, nobody bothered you. And then the Human Genome Project came along in the late 1980s and everything changed. It was like I was one of those little worms underneath a rock, and somebody picked up the rock and the light is hitting me and the worms are squirming around. It all changed. But I looked in those days, early days, for papers that had clean mathematical formulations of problems that came from biology, and they were almost all written by somebody, Joseph Felsenstein. So he was a statistician. I read his papers, and that brought me deeper and deeper into real biology. And when the Human Genome Project began, then I was completely submerged. The field has changed tremendously since when I started. When I started in the field, there were a few visionary people who had created methods, algorithms, even programs, anticipating the day when there would actually be data that could be used with these programs. But they didn't have the data yet. And that's actually quite an unusual thing in the history of computer science. Usually data comes first and then people have to invent methods for dealing with it. But in this field, some visionary people, Mike Waterman, David Sankoff, and many others, had developed methods that would analyze data if we had it. And then with the Human Genome Project and methods for sequencing DNA rapidly on massive scale, The availability of the data has tremendously changed the field and tremendously changed what questions we can ask and answer and what we understand about the biology. And it's brought in massive numbers of new students and new researchers. And so it's a very, very different field than it was